So it's a pretty common thing to hear that modern games now suck. They don't have as much depth or they're shallow. They're just pretty shit, so on and so forth. Looking at you, Star Wars Battlefront. And the question is often asked, who is to blame for these types of games? Like, is it the players? Is it the developers? Is it the publishers? And honestly, I think we're at a point where it isn't the fault of one specific party. And it kind of goes across the board. Like I think at this point, everybody is to blame, and more so, it's a question of where did it all start. Um, Honestly, with the advancement of technology to the point where we started getting like high definition games and so on, gamers were blown away at how beautiful games could look. And this is where everything started going downhill. You got to a point where if a game was released and it didn't look like Crisis or it didn't look like Uncharted or some shit, like if it didn't meet some magical mental line that was in a player's head, they just automatically mark it off as sucking. And which is quite sad because that on its own automatically raised the price of what it took to make games. Um, it got to a point where developers couldn't, even if they wanted to sink their time into features and gameplay and all that, because I mean, no one gave a shit if your game had good gameplay and if your game had deep features if it looked like turd, right? Not excusing a game that looks like complete trash, but you have to kind of understand the scare point from a developer's standpoint. It's like they have this project that they're passionate about, and from the get go, they know that it needs to look at this level, or they should just call it quits. It's pointless. I've often said that players come for the visuals and stay for the gameplay. Well, that's true. It takes a lot of money to make something that looks fucking awesome, right? So I think that's the case. So obviously, more visuals equal obviously a higher budget, and publishers stepped in and they're like, hey, we can give you money to help you achieve this goal. We can let your game look freaking awesome, right? We'll just take a percentage. So developers were like, okay, alright, cool. This makes sense. Games are expensive to make. No, thank you, players, right? And publishers are like, great. So now we have this, the bar rose, right? I mean, if you looked back at gaming, the gaming history, you will see that I mean, gaming visuals, they have been all over the place. There have been a lot of games that we love that the graphics weren't the most impressive, but I think we now live in a day and age where it's like, it's almost like a shortcut, and this is why Anthem players can get screwed over because they get impressed by a graphically impressive trailer, right? And then the gameplay ends up being shallow as hell. Um, and I think that's really one big contributing factor. Like developers are scared. Like even if you look at the indie market, right? There are so many developers that are like they won't even bother trying to make a game because they know that they can't compete visually with AAA standards, and it's rather sad. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that you can't do other stylized ways to get a good visuals, but not everybody is in tune or able to pull off those types of looks. And I mean, it's ridiculous that you want to make a game and you because of budget reasons, you're forced to use some crap art style because that's the only way players are going to accept your product. Um, Ultimately, also, I feel like it became a case where like social media or the internet or just blatant comment sections just ruined shit. Back in the day when we had stuff like GoldenEye or even, well, I didn't have a PlayStation. Ooh, they're like Crash Bash and shit, you know. I mean, these weren't games that were perfect. They didn't have the best controls and so on and so forth, but we made them work, and to be honest, even those weird controls often became like perks of them. No, am I justifying bad controls and shitty design? No, I'm not. But what I'm saying is that we are now at a point where if someone dislikes something in the game, they have no like filter. Like someone will literally like, oh my god, they'll play 15 hours of a game, right? And then the ending is a bit shallow, or there's some weird thing that happens within the 16th hour. And they'd literally go online, find the trailer of the video, downvote it, and start leaving negative comments about the entire product sucks. Like, when you have people reacting like that, and the developers seeing this type of feedback, it's very depressing. And I mean, what's the solution to something like this? I mean, if we're at a point where people don't objectively address games a lot of the time, they just like all emotionally respond to it and it's like, oh my god, this game sucks because it doesn't do this one thing that I like. So I feel like you get a lot of that. And honestly, I think I've noticed where people who appreciate a product tend to enjoy it amongst themselves. They don't really go on comment section and start praising the games. So when you go on a Call of Duty video, for example, and it's like all negative comment, this game sucks, it's repetitive, blah blah blah, it's scripted, and everybody's like, oh my god, the entire Call of Duty audience hates Call of Duty. But that's stupid. No, they don't. These are just the ones that are talking, and oftentimes the ones that are liking the game are playing it. They're not on the internet talking about it, right? So I think in order for us to get to a point where games kind of like start self-correcting, I think there needs to be love on all sides. Players have to be a little bit more rational. Developers have to, you know, be a little bit more. What I would say is not try to please players in every single way across the board, because that's not really the best bet. Let's take a big example, right? You will have a case where a player will say, oh my god, this weapon is overpowered. Please nerf this weapon. Right? What does a good developer do? They go in some instances, and they change the sound effects and they change the visual effects and a few animations without touching the stats. And the players are like, oh my god, you did it, thanks, it's perfect now. He didn't change anything. He didn't touch the values, right? A bad developer just goes in and nerfs it, leading to God knows the entire balance of the game being thrown off. So I think oftentimes the solution isn't just listening hardcore to the player. This isn't to say that developers should dismiss player feedback and so on and so forth, but I do believe like listening to the wrong audience can be something that can lead to a lot of problems. Alright, that's my 2 cents on this topic. If you disagree or agree, please leave a comment. You know, I would love to engage in conversation relating to topics like these. I mean, going forward, I would like to continue making content regarding the game industry and game design in general. So if you like that kind of stuff and you're curious to hear the perspective of somebody that's been working on games for over 10 years, games have been keeping my family alive for over a decade. So if you're curious to hear the perspective of someone that tackled things more from a design or a developer perspective, then please feel free to leave a comment, leave a like or a dislike, and share the video if necessary. And thanks for watching.